My name's Evan. I'm 36, and for most of my life, I thought I was born lucky. I had everything. A last name that opened doors, a father who commanded rooms just by walking in, and an inheritance that should have secured generations. But nothing prepares you for the kind of betrayal that comes not from strangers or enemies, but from your own blood, and the woman you shared your bed with. I don't even know where to start. I've rewritten this 3 times, deleted the whole thing once, and stared at this blinking cursor like it's mocking me. But I can't keep it in anymore. I have to tell someone. So here goes. My name's Evan. I'm 36, and for most of my life, I thought I was born lucky. I had everything. A last name that opened doors, a father who commanded rooms just by walking in, and an inheritance that should have secured generations. But nothing prepares you for the kind of betrayal that comes not from strangers or enemies, but from your own blood, and the woman you shared your bed with. My grandfather built our family business from the ground up, Sinclair Dynamics. You've probably never heard of it unless you work in aerospace, but it's huge. Defense contracts, military-grade engines, propulsion systems, even space tech. By the time my dad took over, it was a $2 billion empire. He was grooming me from day one to take the reins. I wasn't coddled. I was shaped, privately educated, thrown into elite business programs, worked summers at the company from age 15, sat in on board meetings by 19. And I loved it. I wasn't resentful. I wanted to prove I was worthy of the Sinclair legacy. By 30, I was VP of operations. I had a reputation as a shark who didn't lose his soul. I thought I was respected. I thought I was loved. I thought I had people. Then Julia came into the picture. We met at a fundraiser in Boston. She was everything my parents wanted: stunning, brilliant, politically savvy, and from the right kind of family. Not as rich as us, but old money, blue blood. She knew how to move in our world. We clicked fast. Too fast, if I'm being honest now. But I mistook her ambition for drive, her beauty for warmth, her charm for love. My mother adored her, called her a stabilizing force for me. My father, who rarely praised anyone, told me, "You chose well." We were married within a year, and for a while things were good, or they seemed good. Then, 2 years into the marriage, my father died of a stroke. Sudden, brutal, no goodbye. That was the day the wolves started circling. I was gutted, lost. I idolized my father, even when he was cold. The only comfort I had was Julia, or so I thought. She was supportive. She took over funeral arrangements, hosted receptions, spoke at the service with tears in her eyes that I now know were performance. I was so blind, so stupidly blind. A week after the funeral, my mother suggested we begin reorganizing the estate. Said it would be better for the company, for tax purposes, for the family. I agreed, trusting them like the fool I was. A month later, I started noticing discrepancies. Julia was hosting private dinners with board members I hadn't even spoken to since the will was read. My mother was unusually involved in business affairs again, despite being retired for a decade. Then I found a copy of my father's previous will, dated a year before his death, hidden in Julia's filing cabinet. That version would have handed control of 40% of the company to a family-controlled trust, overseen by, get this, my mother and Julia. Not me. But my father changed the will just months before he died. And I remember that conversation with him now. He said, "I trust you. You're not a puppet. You'll protect the company from what it's becoming." He saw it coming. I didn't. I confronted Julia. She went cold. Didn't deny it. Just said, "Your mother and I were only thinking long-term. You're emotional right now. We're protecting your future from yourself." I froze her accounts that night. Shut down every joint financial access we shared. Pulled company records. That's when I discovered she'd been working with Daniel, our in-house counsel, to authorize the sale of proprietary tech overseas. It was legal, barely, thanks to some obscure emergency clause in my father's old succession documents. I filed for divorce the next day. That same night, I found out she was cheating with Daniel. Surveillance confirmed it. They'd been together for months, maybe longer. My wife, my trusted lawyer, My mother, complicit in all of it. They weren't just stealing my money. They were trying to rewrite my legacy. My own mother. She told me over the phone, cold, sharp. Your father built this for the family, not just for you. If you won't listen to reason, we'll go around you. So I locked it down. Every asset, every subsidiary. I used my emergency powers as majority stakeholder to call an emergency shareholder meeting. Fired Daniel. Blocked Julia's access. Kicked out the loyalists they'd planted. That was 6 months ago. Since then, I've been picking up the pieces. I lost friends. Investors dropped off. Half the board resigned. The media painted me as a reclusive heir turned paranoid. But I'm still here. I've restructured the company. Built a new board. I'm working on tech now that will blow our competitors out of the water. I started living alone again. Rebuilding brick by painful brick. I don't speak to my mother. Haven't heard from Julia since the initial divorce proceedings. She's trying to sue for spousal support, but my lawyers are making sure she doesn't get a dime more than she deserves. I didn't write this for pity. I wrote it because betrayal changes you. It burns you hollow, but it also clears the way. They thought they buried me, but I'm not done yet. And soon, they'll all realize they bet against the wrong man. I thought I'd reached the eye of the storm, but all I'd done was survive the first wave. Now the hurricane's winds were shifting, and this time, they weren't coming for my money. They were coming for me. It began quietly. A name here, call there. People I hadn't heard from in years reaching out, just to check in. One of my old classmates from Wharton, a guy who never gave me the time of day unless he needed a job lead, sent me a message that read, "Hey man, saw your name floating around. Everything okay? Heard some weird stuff." Weird stuff? I wish. Soon I started piecing it together. Julia was orchestrating a media campaign. A silent one. Her face hadn't hit headlines yet. She wasn't going public, not directly. No interviews, no articles. Just whispers. She was seeding a narrative. I know how this works. You poison the air around someone until people don't even question what they're breathing in. It wasn't just the press. She was pulling strings behind the scenes. Feeding private information to business rivals, ex-employees, anyone bitter enough to say something damning if pushed. Then came the hit piece. It landed on a mid-tier financial blog, but with ties to a much larger outlet. The headline read, "Billionaire Breakdown? Inside the Fall of Evan Sinclair." They called me erratic, emotionally compromised, isolated. Claimed I was unraveling after my father's death, clinging to control of the company out of insecurity. Said I'd shut out advisors, fired people without cause, and was possibly experiencing an undiagnosed mental health episode. And the sources? Close family members, former legal representatives, Julia, Daniel, my own mother. The betrayal felt like a knife twisted slowly through my spine. I didn't sleep for 2 nights after it published. I kept pacing the floor of my condo, reading the article over and over, not because I believed it, but because I couldn't understand how easily people were believing them. People I had mentored, helped, backed during boardroom bloodbaths. People I considered allies. The phones started ringing. Partners pulling deals. Venture firms taking a pause. I even got a call from our aerospace client in D.C., a literal defense contract we'd been cultivating for over 2 years, saying they needed to reassess viability given internal leadership concerns. It was like watching a house you built from blueprints burn to ash and being told it was your fault for striking the match, when the accelerant was your own family. But the real blow came from Richard Hale. Richard's practically family. My godfather in everything but name. He was one of my father's closest friends. He called me late one night, voice low, tone somber. Said he didn't want to worry me, but that they were building a legal case against me. Not a criminal one, not yet, but civil, yes. And insidious. Julia and Daniel had apparently compiled a portfolio of evidence. Records, emails taken out of context, edited call transcripts, testimonies from old staffers they'd paid off, all trying to prove that I pressured my father to alter his will when he was mentally compromised, that I took advantage of grief and illness to secure my own rise. The irony of it all? I remember those final conversations with my father. How lucid he was. How cautious. How much he hated the idea of Julia and my mother having that kind of power. He said, and I quote, "You're the only one I trust not to sell this company's soul." And now they were trying to paint me as the traitor. The rage inside me was volcanic. It wasn't just the betrayal, it was the perversion of truth. These people weren't just rewriting the story. They were trying to erase the real version entirely. And my mother? She wasn't silent either. I found out she was hosting charity events again. That smug face of hers back in the society pages, talking about preserving family legacy. I saw her in a photo next to Julia at a gala, smiling, like nothing happened, like I didn't exist. But they forgot something important. I do exist, and I'm not done. I called my attorney, the real one, not the snake Daniel who'd been quietly forging backdoor deals. I told him to prep everything. We're going to sue for defamation. We're going to uncover every fake transaction Julia and Daniel authorized. We're going to audit my mother's foundation and expose every dime she rerouted to help bankroll their campaign against me. And we're going to hit back, hard and publicly. Because I've realized something chilling but necessary. You can't save people who are trying to destroy you. You can't reason with shadows in the dark. But you can shine a light so bright it burns them. They thought they buried me in silence. They're about to learn what happens when the grave doesn't hold. It's strange how betrayal echoes, how it reverberates through your skin, your sleep, your voice. I've been living in that echo, in the spaces between the lies and truths my family built around me like a glass prison. But now I'm the one shattering the walls. 2 weeks ago, I planted the first blow. A short, pointed message on my company's official page, letting the world know that both Julia and Daniel were terminated for breach of fiduciary duty. No name-calling. No melodrama, just facts clean and sharp as a scalpel. But behind the scenes, we were slicing much deeper. The audit we completed quietly had revealed more than theft. It revealed a coordinated siphoning operation. Julia, Daniel, and one former board member, someone I trusted like an older brother, had moved over $4.7 million in disguised expenses, ghost contractor payments, and inflated vendor deals. All of it strategically timed during the last 6 months of my father's illness. They weren't just stealing. They were planning for a future without me. Or without me in power, at least. I had the legal team file a forensic analysis of every shared account connected to my family. I didn't care if it took them through offshore holdings, real estate deals, or fucking crypto wallets. I wanted everything. But as much as I was fighting personally, I was unraveling in silence. Every time I sat at my father's old desk, I'd remember his words before the cancer reached his brain. They're not ready to lose control of you, Evan. You were never theirs to begin with. He saw it. All of it. He watched Julia manipulate public opinion, watched my mother host charity events where she never once mentioned his name in her speeches. He told me, "The company may have my name, but the fire in it? That's you. Protect it." So that's what I did. Even if it meant lighting everything else around it on fire. Then the press hit back. After my public post, financial bloggers started poking holes in Julia's narrative. A few brave ones published pieces about inconsistencies in her timeline, how she went from loving wife to corporate whistleblower overnight. But just as quickly, another article dropped from an anonymous source with an audio clip. They claimed it was me, drunk, angry, and berating Julia over inheritance documents. But I've never touched alcohol. The clip was so obviously AI generated it would have been laughable if it weren't so damn dangerous. And yet, people believed it. That night I didn't sleep. I went back into our old shared house, the one I hadn't entered since Julia moved out. My name's still on the deed. It was like stepping into a mausoleum of fake memories. Photos still hung on the wall. Our wedding, a ski trip in Aspen, the night she told me she was pregnant. But it was the drawer in the study that gutted me. Inside, hidden beneath years of tax forms and outdated utility bills, I found an envelope. Unopened. My father's handwriting on the front. Addressed to me. Dated 3 days before he died. Hands shaking, I opened it. "Evan, If you're reading this, it means something went wrong. Or maybe everything did. I've rewritten this letter 3 times now, unsure what you'll need to hear. But I'll say this, Julia is not who she pretends to be. I saw things. Bank withdrawals. Messages on a burner phone. She's planning something. I didn't have the strength to confront her. But you must. You're stronger than me. Protect what we built. And protect yourself. I'm sorry I didn't say more when I was alive. I thought I had more time. I broke. I fell to the floor with that letter clutched to my chest, gasping like I'd been sucker-punched by a ghost. I knew he knew. But having it in ink, his ink was the kind of grief that doesn't just hollow you out. It burns. And then came the visit. My mother. She showed up at my condo unannounced, draped in pearls and crocodile tears. Her knock was soft, rehearsed. Her expression was a mix of concern and fear, not for me, but for her image. I came to talk, she said. I came to tell you Julia's trying to flee, she said. She sat on my velvet couch like she owned it, like this was still her world. And in a way it had been for too long. She told me Julia was pulling out of the country, that she had sold off 2 luxury condos and was planning to liquidate the consulting firm they created to steal from my company. That Daniel had gone dark and lawyers had started pulling back their offers to represent them. And then she said the words that sealed everything. We were trying to protect the family legacy. But now I see, I chose the wrong child. Not, I'm sorry. Not, you were right. Just, regret that her golden goose stopped laying eggs. I told her to get out. I told her we weren't blood anymore. That night, I filed the civil lawsuit, and with it, my team pushed a motion to freeze Julia's domestic assets. And thank God we did. Because the next morning, she tried to leave. Julia boarded a private jet bound for Portugal. But she didn't make it out of the airport. Not because she was arrested, not yet, but because the federal injunction kicked in, and her plane was ordered grounded until her accounts could be verified for fraud. And the cherry on top, the SEC opened a quiet inquiry into their shell company's financials. Apparently, we weren't the only ones noticing discrepancies. Julia's allies have gone silent. Daniel's been blacklisted. My mother has vanished from socialite circles, and not because she's embarrassed. Because she's guilty, and because she's scared. But then something new arrived. A letter. No return address. No signature. Inside was a black and white photo of my father in his study. I know the room. I know the day. It was one of the last coherent afternoons he had. On the back of the photo was a message in ink. He knew. They all knew. Dig deeper. No idea who sent it. But it chilled me to the bone. If my father knew, and others knew too, then this wasn't just betrayal. It was conspiracy. And I've only peeled back the first layer. I thought I'd already crawled through the worst of the rot. I thought the betrayal, by my wife, my mother, and my cousin, had reached its peak when they stole my inheritance, tried to erase my legacy, and dragged my name through the mud. But I didn't understand the scale. This wasn't just betrayal. This was orchestration. Calculated, cold, intergenerational, and planned. When that black and white photo of my father came in the mail with the message, he knew. They all knew. Dig deeper. It wasn't just a cryptic warning. It was a F***king detonation under everything I believed about my family. I hired a private investigator. A real one. The kind who doesn't advertise. The kind who used to do dirty work for the government and now keeps secrets for billionaires. He didn't ask many questions. Just smoked 3 cigarettes during our meeting and said, "People don't hire me unless they already know they're about to burn down their family tree." I gave him every name I could think of. Julia, my mother, Daniel, even my late father. I wanted skeletons, secrets, bank trails, emails, whispers from the grave. And he delivered. God, did he deliver? Turns out my father knew everything. Julia's secret phone. Her meetings with Daniel. The consulting firm they were setting up while he was wasting away in a hospital bed. He had an entire dossier, timelines, bank statements, private recordings, documenting their moves. He wasn't dying unaware. He was dying betrayed. And the worst part? He tried to protect me. He changed his will completely. The new version left everything to me. Every share of the business, the properties, the estate, even personal items Julia assumed would be hers. But the will was never signed. You want to know why? Because my mother stopped it. She manipulated my father during the last coherent weeks of his life. She convinced him that making major legal changes under emotional stress would be reckless. She got her old friend, a corrupt lawyer who had handled her estate paperwork for years, to stall the final appointment. They killed the will before the cancer could kill him. And then they sat in my father's funeral, crocodile tears pouring down their faces, while they divvied up his empire behind closed doors. But here's the part that shattered me more than anything. They knew I wouldn't fight. They counted on it. There are emails between Julia and my mother that my PI dug up from a burned laptop. Yes, a literal burned laptop. She thought smashing the hard drive with a hammer and lighting it on fire would keep secrets buried. My PI used a forensic restoration lab. In those emails, they talk about me like a pawn. Not a son. Not a husband. A weak link. Julia writes, Evan's in grief. Let him stay there. The longer he mourns, the less he'll notice we're cleaning house. And my own mother responds, he was always too sentimental for this world. Let him play the morning sun while we handle business. It's one thing to lose your inheritance. It's another to realize you were never loved. Just managed, controlled, predicted. When I confronted my mother with the truth, she didn't cry. She didn't even defend herself. She just sipped her wine like we were still in her country club and said, you wouldn't have survived the power. You weren't made for it. I asked her, then why keep me around at all? And she answered, because you made Julia look legitimate. She was nothing without you. That was the moment I felt something crack. Not in a rageful, shouting kind of way. In a silent snap. Like a bone inside me I didn't know was broken until it finally gave out. Julia, meanwhile, went into overdrive. After I posted the update about her termination and the fraud, she lawyered up. Hard. They sent cease and desist letters, threatened defamation suits, tried to drag me through the court of public opinion. Then the IRS entered the scene. Apparently someone, my PI or maybe one of Julia's former assistants who's had enough of being used, leaked everything. The offshore accounts, the shell companies, the fake invoices for services never rendered. Federal agents visited her office. Twice. Suddenly, Julia's tone changed. No more Instagram posts about healing and resilience. Her influencer page is now a wasteland of fake comments and PR-crafted captions. Her sponsored deals dropped her. Even Daniel deleted his LinkedIn. But then something huge happened. My PI found a flash drive. It was hidden inside an old safe deposit box registered to my father. The password? A date no one but the two of us would ever remember. The day I built my first engine in the garage with him. I cried unlocking it. Inside was a video. Personal message. My father, frail, pale, his voice hoarse but sharp as ever, looking into the camera with sadness, anger, and love. He said, if you're seeing this, Evan, then they've won. Or they think they have. I tried to stop them. I changed the will. I built evidence. I gathered proof. But I couldn't beat the cancer fast enough. And your mother, your wife, I failed to see how far they'd go. But you're stronger than me. Don't just protect the company. Burn the rot out of our bloodline. Build something new from the ashes. I sobbed. For hours. Then I wiped my face, copied that video onto 10 encrypted drives, and sent one to every lawyer I had. But I didn't stop there. I sent it anonymously to 5 journalists, 3 finance blogs, and the board of my company. In 24 hours, everything exploded. Julia's name is now attached to a federal fraud investigation. My mother is under financial scrutiny. Daniel's offshore account activity was flagged. Former allies are distancing themselves. Investors are calling me, asking how they can support the new leadership of the company. And just today, the assistant who sent me the photo messaged again. She says there's a hidden bank account, one my father set up long ago, filled with investments no one knew about. It's in my name. Untouched. She called it his legacy fallback plan. I haven't opened it yet, because this story isn't finished. Not until every name, every fake contract, every lie is burned out of the books. Not until I decide what the legacy will be. Not until they see me rise from the ashes they tried to bury me in, and realize that this time, I'm not grieving. I'm building an empire, and they're not invited. I didn't think silence could ever be louder than betrayal, but the silence that followed the leak of my father's final video, it was thunderous, almost biblical in weight. My phone didn't just buzz, it convulsed. Every hour, every 5 minutes, news outlets, former allies, old family friends who had suddenly remembered I existed. The board of directors scheduled an emergency meeting. One of them, Mr. Halberd, the stiff ex-military man who hadn't looked me in the eye in years, sent a private message that just said, "It's time you came home." But home was no longer a place. It was a battlefield. Julia tried to strike first. Of course she did. I expected her to lawyer up, but I didn't expect the venom in her move. She filed for an emergency restraining order, claiming I was harassing her and threatening her safety. She cited emotional instability, erratic behavior, and even obsessive delusions. She literally submitted old, out-of-context texts from when I was grieving my father as evidence of mental instability. But here's where it backfired. Because when my legal team countersued, and the judge demanded full disclosure of assets, bank statements, and digital communications, her house of lies collapsed in real time. Emails, transactions, travel records. My PI had all of it ready. But the real bombshell came from an unexpected place. My younger sister. Yeah, remember her? The one who had practically ghosted me for 2 years after my wife's manipulation? The one who sided with Julia because she just wanted peace. She showed up at my door one night, soaked from the rain, shaking, holding a USB drive and crying like a child. "I found Dad safe," she whispered. I almost slammed the door, but she just fell to her knees. "He left something in there for you. It had your name on it. Not mine. Not hers. Just you." Inside the drive, a scanned journal. My father's journal. Every page was a dagger. One entry read, "Marie and Julia talk when they think I'm asleep. They're planning to sell the Valencia property. I never told Julia about it. Marie must have shown her the will. I have no allies left under this roof. Except Evan. And I can't tell him, because I see the weight he already carries trying to hold on to this family." My hands trembled holding it. This man, my father, was a king in a crumbling castle, surrounded by snakes, alone, but always thinking of me. And then came the biggest entry, one I never saw coming. "They think I don't know what they did in 1999, but I know about the fire. I know Daniel was there. They covered it up. Insurance fraud. Evan was barely 6. He doesn't remember, but I do. And now Julia's whispering about a legacy exit strategy. They don't know I've already begun moving the real money into the shadow fund. Evan's name is on every transfer. The fire. The one I was told was a freak electrical fault. The one that burned down the company's first R&D warehouse. That's when I remembered being 6. A night of smoke. Waking up to flashing red lights. My mother yelling at someone to shut him up before the cops here. It wasn't an accident. They burned it down to erase records of embezzlement. And I was collateral in their crime. I had buried that memory. Until now, fueled by rage, I did what no one in the family ever expected. I called a press conference. I stood in front of every major news outlet in our city, in front of a mural of my father, and spoke the truth. Not in legalese, not through lawyers. With my voice, my tears, my fury. They tried to destroy my father's empire. They tried to write me out of the story. But this is my blood, my name, my legacy, and I'm not afraid of burning their lies to the ground. The board responded within hours. A vote was held. I was named CEO. Official. Irrevocable. Julia lost her board seat. Daniel was removed pending legal action. My mother. Oh, she tried to rally her old cronies. But when the IRS froze her accounts and her vacation property was raided, she vanished. No calls, no letters. But it wasn't over. Because that same night, I received an anonymous email. No subject line, no message, just one file attachment. Surveillance footage. Black and white, grainy, time-stamped from 6 years ago. Julia, my mother, Daniel, in a dimly lit room, laughing, drinking wine. Julia leans in and says, "If Evan ever starts sniffing around, we'll say he's unstable. That he's hallucinating like his grandfather did." My mother clinks her glass. "And if that doesn't work, well, accidents happen." That broke me. That destroyed any last hope that this was just greed. This wasn't about money. This was erasure. Murder by manipulation. They wanted me gone, out of the picture by any means necessary. They were plotting my downfall for years. But now I'm not playing defense anymore. I've sold the beach house. I've liquidated the properties they cherished. I'm turning the old family estate into a rehab facility for victims of white-collar crime. And the final piece? Tomorrow, I visit the place where my father said he left something for me, under the foundation of the house I was born in. I don't know what I'll find. Maybe it's symbolic. Maybe it's real. But one thing's certain. This empire was forged in fire and betrayal. And now I hold the match. I arrived at the old Carlisle estate at dawn, the horizon still soaked in the color of bruised skies, a perfect metaphor for what this place had done to me. I hadn't stepped foot in that house in over a decade. Not since my father's funeral, when Julia refused to sit next to me and my mother looked at me as though I were some stranger trespassing on her grief. It wasn't grief. It was victory, and I was the last fool who didn't realize it. Now I stood with gloves on and a demolition crew behind me, staring at the wine cellar door. That door was always locked when I was a child. My father once told me, "Some rooms in this house hold too many shadows." I didn't understand what he meant until we cracked it open. The tiles peeled back to reveal a thick concrete slab, uneven, a faint square outlined beneath years of dust and mildew. We drilled. The sound echoed like screams from a crypt. When we hit the steel box embedded in the floor, my breath caught. The biometric scanner flickered to life. Retinal scan. Thumbprint. Both mine. The safe hissed open. Inside, I found a wooden box, a journal wrapped in a velvet cloth, an encrypted laptop, and a sealed letter with my full name written in my father's bold hand. Evan Alexander Carlisle. It was the first time I cried in front of other men in years. I didn't care. "If you're reading this," the letter began, "it means they finally made their move, and it means you survived. I've kept quiet all these years not because I was weak, but because I needed to protect you while you were still too good to understand the rot you were born into. I didn't want to make you hate your mother, or Julia, or your uncle. I just wanted one Carlisle to walk away clean. But maybe that was never an option." The journal was filled with entries cataloging years of manipulation, theft, silent resentment, dates, names, quotes, suspicions, hidden transfers. My father had been watching them even as they tried to isolate him. He wrote like a man in captivity. But it was the laptop that delivered the real punch. Video files, surveillance footage from hidden cameras installed in several rooms of the house, including his own study. Files dated over 10 years back. I watched them all. One video stopped my heart. Julia, my mother Marie, and Daniel, sitting in my father's study, drunk, on the night of my father's second heart attack. My mother's voice was slurred but sharp. "I never wanted him. I married that man because he had a name that mattered. Now it's just a name I want on my building." Daniel laughed. "We should have finished this when the Valencia merger failed." Then Julia, ice-cold and clear-eyed, said something that made me sick. "You can always trigger another episode. Just let the board get wind of his condition. Stress will do the rest. We can't afford another year of Evan hanging around like he's next in line. We need a clean end." And then she looked straight at the camera she didn't know was there and whispered, almost theatrically, "Accidents happen, after all." I felt physically ill. I collapsed to the floor and screamed. Not in anger. Not in vengeance. In grief. They hadn't just betrayed him. They orchestrated his emotional assassination. They gaslit him, isolated him, let his paranoia fester, all while pretending to care. And then they used his condition as justification to start siphoning off assets and rewriting trust documents while his mind was crumbling under stress they caused. This wasn't about inheritance anymore. This was psychological murder. The next day I went to war. We submitted the evidence to the DA, the IRS, and multiple federal agencies. The footage alone launched investigations across 2 states. The letter from my father became a part of a sealed affidavit. My legal team, now a team of 15, filed motions faster than they could respond to. Julia was arrested first. Her mugshot, vacant, red-eyed, her once polished face now unrecognizably hollow, was splashed across the evening news. Daniel fled the country, but Interpol has issued a red notice. His assets are being liquidated to repay stolen funds. My mother? She attempted to check into a psychiatric facility in Oregon, claiming trauma from losing her family to lies. She even tried to sue me for defamation. She lost, publicly, brutally. Her name is now attached to fraud, coercion, elder abuse, and conspiracy charges. Her bank accounts are frozen. Her face, once synonymous with elite philanthropy in Boston, now scrolls under the CNN ticker with the word disgraced permanently linked beside it. But none of that could touch what happened next. I held a memorial for my father. A real one. Not the polished PR funeral they threw when he died. This time it was on his terms. I read his letter aloud in front of hundreds. I spoke the truth about the empire, the betrayal, and the burden of wearing a name soaked in so much pain. And then I announced the formation of the Carlyle Redemption Trust, a fund built from the remains of the empire they tried to poison. It will fund education, legal protection, and mental health resources for heirs and victims of internal family fraud and abuse. The press called it a revolution born from legacy fire. But I don't feel like a revolutionary. I feel like a man who buried every version of his past and is now building a future no one can steal. And just as I was about to leave the podium, a woman approached me. Older, elegant, her face familiar, though I couldn't place her. She handed me a letter. "Your father helped me once," she said quietly. "I was one of his secrets too. Read it when you're ready." That night I opened it. Inside was a photo, my father, much younger, holding a baby boy. "You're not the only Carlyle heir," the letter said. "The story's not over. There's still one final truth buried out there, and I intend to dig it out no matter what I find." The letter from the mystery woman sat on my desk for a week. I stared at it every night, unable to open it after that cryptic message. "You're not the only Carlyle heir. My father had another child?" It was a truth so violent in its possibility that part of me didn't want it to be real. But I had learned by now, secrets don't rot on their own. You have to dig them out, even if your hands bleed in the process. I finally opened the rest of the letter. His name was Gabriel, born in 1990, 3 years before me, the product of a love affair my father had before he married my mother. The woman, Helen, was a jazz singer from New Orleans. She left the Carlyle world when she realized how dangerous the legacy could be. But my father didn't abandon her. He supported Gabriel in silence, sending funds, arranging for a private education, checking in behind closed doors. My father had raised me as the sole heir, but now I knew I wasn't the only son. I found Gabriel living quietly in Baltimore, running a community art center. I didn't tell him who I was at first. I visited the center as a donor, watched how he interacted with people. Warm, patient, empathetic. He had our father's eyes. Eventually, I sat him down and told him everything. The betrayal, the surveillance, the arrests, the will, and finally the truth. He didn't say anything for a long time. He just stared at me, then quietly said, "I always wondered why a stranger kept paying for my tuition but never showed up to a single graduation." I handed him our father's journal. He read it, in full. We sat in silence for 2 hours afterward. No words needed. The next week, I brought Gabriel with me to the same estate where it all started. But now it was ours. The portraits of our ancestors were gone. The dusty halls stripped of oil paintings and leather chairs. It was just walls and echoes now. No more ghosts, no more poison. In that empty house, I told him, this place doesn't deserve to hold the future. And we tore it down, brick by brick. In its place, we're building something else. The Carlisle Institute for Ethical Legacy, a place where financial power meets moral accountability. A think tank, a school, a refuge for people caught in the same traps we were. The headlines now call us the brothers who burned a dynasty to build a future. Julia was sentenced to 17 years in prison. Daniel is facing extradition. My mother, she issued a public apology through her lawyers, more to save face than out of remorse. I haven't spoken to her since. I won't. There are still nights I wake up gasping, sweat-drenched from dreams where I'm back in that house, helpless again, where Julia's whisper plays on repeat. Accidents happen. But then I remember, the accident didn't happen to me. The accident was me. I was the anomaly, the fault line they never planned for, the sun they tried to erase and rewrite. But I didn't just survive. I rewrote the narrative. Now, when people hear the Carlisle name, they don't think wealth or scandal. They think reinvention. They think truth. They think legacy reborn. I no longer crave their apologies or their validation. I no longer mourn the family I lost, because I gained something far more powerful. A brother I never knew, a mission I was born for, and a future that no one, not Julia, not my mother, not the weight of 1,000 stolen inheritances, can take from me again. Because this time I'm not holding on to a name. I'm building one, from the ashes, and no one will ever forget it. Thank you for stepping into another tale with me. Every story unlocks a different world, and I'm glad you were here for the journey. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my stories Unchained, where every ending is just the beginning of another adventure. Until next time, keep your mind open and your heart ready for the next story, Unchained.